Imagine waking up one morning to find that your pension plans, something you've relied on your entire life, have been delayed, and now you're forced to wait years longer than expected. This is the reality many 1950s-born women, part of the Waspi group, are facing right now. Hi, I'm David, and in today's video, we're diving into one of the most important legal battles in recent memory, the Waspi women's fight for compensation. But what does this battle really mean for those affected, and can the Waspi women actually win this case? The clock is ticking, and every day, more and more of these women wonder if they'll ever get the justice they deserve. You might be asking yourself, how did we get here? Well, the government changed the state pension age for women born in the 1950s, pushing it from 60 to 66. For many of these women, this meant an unexpected wait, up to 6 years, for their hard-earned pension. But here's the kicker, they weren't properly informed about the change. The Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, failed to notify them in time, leaving millions in the dark and scrambling to adjust their financial plans. Now, these women are not just fighting for the pensions they were promised, they are fighting for compensation for the years of financial stress and uncertainty caused by this delay. So, what happens next? Can the Waspi women actually win this case in court? And more importantly, will they finally receive the compensation they deserve? But here's the twist, while the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, PHSO, has recommended compensation between £1,000 and £2,950 for each woman, the government has rejected the idea. They argue that it wouldn't be fair to taxpayers to foot a bill of over £10 billion. However, the Waspi women and their lawyers at Bindmans LLP are determined to prove that the government's decision was unlawful and that these women have suffered financially in a way that can't simply be brushed aside. But even if the Waspi women win this case in court, there's a big hurdle ahead: legal costs. The government has refused to cap costs, which means the Waspi campaign could be facing massive legal bills if they lose. So, why is the government being so stubborn about this? Why won't they acknowledge the financial injustice that many of these women have faced? And let's not forget, the government claims that 90% of the Waspi women knew about the pension changes, but the campaigners argue that this figure is misleading, as it was based on a survey of just 200 women. So what's really going on here? Will the Waspi women prevail in their legal fight, or will the government stand firm? Stay tuned as we break down the key facts, dive into the legal battle, and explore what this could mean not just for the Waspi women, but for all of us who rely on our pensions to live a secure and comfortable life in retirement. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and keep watching as we explore how this case could change the future of pensions in the UK. You don't want to miss what comes next, because the outcome of this legal battle could affect all of us, especially seniors who depend on their pensions. The issue of pension age changes has been a hot topic in the UK for the last decade, but the controversy surrounding the 1950s-born women, collectively known as the Waspi women, has taken the debate to new heights. These women, who were born between 1950 and 1960, had long been promised a pension at the age of 60. However, over time, the government decided to increase the state pension age for women, aligning it with that of men at 65, and later to 66. For many women in this group, the decision came as a shock, with little to no communication from the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP. Some women didn't even know the change was coming until it was too late, and they were left without adequate time to plan financially for their future. It's important to understand that for many women born in the 1950s, their state pension was a significant part of their financial security. Many had already made plans around receiving their pension at 60, counting on it to cover essential expenses and possibly supplement other income. But with the pension age increased, this left many facing years of financial hardship. The situation became even more distressing because many of these women had worked hard throughout their lives, contributing to the state pension system in good faith, only to be faced with the prospect of having to wait longer to receive what they were promised. As you can imagine, the impact of this change has been far-reaching. Some women have faced severe financial strain, unable to adjust their plans or make alternative arrangements. Others have been forced to delay retirement, seeking employment well into their 60s, often in jobs that are physically demanding or low-paying. For many, this has been an overwhelming experience, and the government's failure to properly inform these women about the changes has added insult to injury. Now, let's talk about the legal fight that has been unfolding in recent years. The Waspi women have been fighting for compensation for the financial losses they've suffered due to this delay in receiving their pensions. In 2019, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, PHSO, issued a report which found that the Department for Work and Pensions had been guilty of maladministration. The report confirmed that the DWP had failed to notify the women about the increase in pension age in a clear and timely manner. The Ombudsman's findings were damning, but despite this, the government refused to accept the recommendation to provide compensation to the affected women. The Ombudsman had suggested compensation ranging from £1,000 to £2,950 per woman, depending on the severity of the impact they faced. However, the government rejected this recommendation outright, claiming that paying out such a large amount, potentially costing taxpayers £10.5 billion, would be unfair. The government also argued that 90% of the affected women were already aware of the changes to their pension age, even though many in the Waspi group have contested this claim. The Waspi campaigners, along with their legal representatives at Bindmans LLP, argued that the government's decision was not just unjust but also unlawful. They claim that the government's rejection of the compensation recommendation is based on flawed reasoning and misinformation. According to the Waspi campaign, the government is misusing the data from surveys to support their argument that most women were aware of the pension age change. They point out that the surveys only sampled a small group of women, around 200 out of a potential 3.6 million affected individuals. This small sample size, they argue, isn't representative of the entire group of affected women. Moreover, the Waspi campaigners contend that the government's stance that no financial injustice has occurred is legally wrong. They argue that the government's failure to properly inform the women about the pension age changes directly led to financial hardship for many of them. The legal case currently unfolding in the High Court is an attempt to hold the government accountable for this failure and to secure compensation for the women who have been affected. The case is also pivotal because it raises important questions about how the government handles changes to social security programs and the way in which citizens are informed about these changes. If the Waspi women win, it could set a precedent for how future pension changes are communicated and how individuals are compensated when they suffer financial harm as a result of administrative failures. In this sense, this legal battle isn't just about the Waspi women, it's about holding the government accountable and ensuring that vulnerable groups are protected from the kind of miscommunication that led to this situation in the first place. Now, let's take a closer look at the legal challenges the Waspi women face. Even if the women win their case, there's still the issue of legal costs. The government has refused to agree to a cost-capping order, which would have limited the amount of legal fees on both sides. This means that if the Waspi campaign loses the case, they could be on the hook for the government's legal costs, which could amount to millions of pounds. This is a significant financial risk, and it's one of the reasons why the Waspi women have been relying on public donations to fund their legal battle. As of now, the campaign has raised over £200,000, but they're aiming to reach £230,000 to cover the costs of the case. The refusal to cap legal costs has sparked outrage among campaigners, with some arguing that it's an attempt by the government to intimidate the Waspi group into backing down. The Waspi chair, in particular, has been vocal about this issue, calling it a scare tactic aimed at discouraging the women from pursuing their case. Despite these challenges, the Waspi campaigners remain determined to fight on. They argue that it's not just about the money, it's about securing justice for the millions of women who have been wronged by the government's actions. At the heart of this legal battle is the question of whether the government's actions were reasonable. The government argues that they made reasonable efforts to inform the public about the changes to the pension age. However, the Waspi women and their supporters believe that these efforts were insufficient and that many women were left in the dark about the changes. The failure to notify the women in a clear and timely manner, they argue, constitutes a serious failure of governance and a violation of their rights. The next few months are crucial for the Waspi women and for the broader debate about pensions and social security in the UK. If they win their case, it could send a powerful message to the government about the importance of transparent and effective communication with citizens, especially those who are vulnerable. It could also set a precedent for how similar cases are handled in the future, and it might lead to changes in how pension age changes are communicated and implemented. One thing is certain, the outcome of this case will have significant implications for millions of people who rely on their state pension to secure a stable and dignified retirement. For seniors across the UK, this case is about more than just the Waspi women, it's about the future of pensions and whether the government will be held accountable for the way it treats its citizens. In the coming weeks and months, the eyes of the country will be on the High Court as the Waspi women continue their fight for justice. No matter what the outcome, one thing is clear: these women have already made a huge impact on the national conversation about pensions and the treatment of seniors in the UK. Whether they win or lose, their fight will continue to resonate for years to come.